maybe we'll get started. I'd like to welcome everyone. I'm Sue Keisler, Board President of xMinds, the organization hosting tonight's event. xMinds is a nonprofit organization providing support for families with an autistic student in Montgomery County. And though we are hosting MCPS speakers tonight, we are completely independent from the public schools and we advocate for transparency. Let me begin by saying we only have an hour and a half to cover a lot of information, so I'm going to try to keep my introduction brief. Our goal is to bring you a thorough and clear review of all the services and programs that MCPS offers to preschool students on the autism spectrum. Our speakers are the MCPS coordinators, instructional specialists, and program specialists who know these programs intimately. We're very grateful to them for taking the time to prepare their presentations and for being here to share what they know and to answer your questions. There's a wide range in the support needs of students who are autistic, and there is a correspondingly wide range of programs that MCPS offers to support these kids. The first presentation will cover preschool education programs. So our first presenter, the PEP has 7 different types of classes that offer different levels of support, and taken in the order from the version of PEP that provides the least support to the one that provides the most support. The PEP classes you'll hear about tonight are PEP Itinerant, PEP Inclusive Pre-K, PEP Collaboration, PEP Pilot, PEP Classic, PEP Intensive Needs Class, also known as PEP Inc., and PEP Full Day. After you hear about the PEP program, all 7 versions of it, you will hear about another preschool program that provides more support even than the PEP program does, and it is specifically for students with autism. That is the Comprehensive Autism Preschool Program, also known as CAP. As you listen to the presentations, please write your questions for the presenters in the chat. I will read them out loud when we get to the Q&A period at around 8 o'clock. If you need clarification of anything sooner than that, the MCPS and xMinds staff who are here tonight may be able to answer your questions quickly in the chat. In fact, I would like to mention that we have several important MCPS administrators who will be dropping in and out of our sessions. They may or may not be here now. They may come a little later. I'd like to welcome Dr. Margaret Cage, Chief Student Support Officer, Dr. Lisa Gaillard-Jones, Associate Superintendent, Division of Special Education, Erica Williams, Director of the Department of Special Education Pre-Kindergarten and Related Services, and Chris Erickson, Supervisor of Services for Students with Autism Spectrum Disorders. Thank you to all those administrators for being with us tonight. A word about questions. I do want to give some guidance. The presenters tonight know all about the programs they run, but they don't know your child. So the questions they can answer are questions about their programs, but they will not be able to answer questions about where your child will fit best. Ultimately, where your child is placed will be a decision made by your IEP team. But remember that you parents are important members of this team. The more you know about your child's placement options, the more effective and helpful you can be when your IEP team is considering your child's placement decisions. Finally, before we start the presentation, I want to quickly mention that we are recording this in both English and Spanish. We will make the recordings and presentation slides available to you in a few days. Our speakers tonight are Mary Rose Katina, Coordinator of the Preschool Education Program, PEP, who will talk about all 7 PEP programs. Then we will hear about the Comprehensive Autism Preschool Program, CAP, from 2 speakers who are both from the Autism Spectrum Disorders Services, which we usually refer to as the Autism Unit. We will have Lisa Grant, Instructional Specialist, and Lauren McGinley, Program Specialist. Before we get to the presentations about PEP and CAP, MCPS leadership has requested a few minutes to give you an overview of their vision and strategic priorities for special education in MCPS. Erica Williams, Director of the Department of Special Education Pre-Kindergarten and Related Services, will present that overview now. Erica, thank you so much for being with us. I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you for having me. And I want to say it is a pleasure to be with all of you this evening in this role. As Sue said, I am the Director for Special Education Pre-Kindergarten and Related Services. This is my 2nd year in this role, but prior to this, I was a principal for a number of years, and I had CAP services at my school and worked with people here that we have with us this evening And before that, I was a speech language pathologist in the district, and also worked with the autism population heavily. So this is an area that is near and dear to my heart. And so I'm really happy I can be here with you this evening, again, to provide an overview for our division at this time. Next slide, please. For the overview, there's been a restructuring for the district in general, and that includes our division. So I did want to take some time just to share with you who some of the people are, new faces that we have in leadership, and also some familiar faces. So you will see here that starting the end of last school year into this school year, we have a new chief, Dr. Margaret Cage, who is the Chief Student Support Officer. And as a part of her executive team, there is Dr. Jenkins, who is her executive director, Dr. Lisa Jones, who is the associate superintendent for the Division of Special Education, and Mr. Rob Bird, who is the fiscal supervisor. Next slide. As a part of the Division of Specialized Support Services, there are almost like two branches that we have merged into one. And on this particular slide, you will see the well-being side of our division, again, with Dr. Cage leading the way. But as a part of our team, we also have Dr. Karen Cruz, who is the Director of Counseling Services, Dr. Christina Connolly-Chester, who is the Director of Psychological Services. We have Ms. Shauna K. Joranby, who is the Director of Student Engagement, Behavioral Health, and Academics. We have Mr. Steve Neff, who is the Director of Student Support and Attendance Service. And we have Stephanie Wallace, who is the Supervisor of Wellbeing for our social work team. Next slide. On the special education side of our division, we have Mrs. Jada Langston, who is our new Director of Special Education Services. And on her team, she has Ashley Doyle, who is the Supervisor of Alternate Learning Outcomes, Chris Erickson, who's the Supervisor of the Autism Unit. We have Dr. Cynthia Webb, who is the Supervisor of Special Education Services. And we also have Patricia Cochran, who is the Supervisor of Transition Services. And then my part of the division with pre-kindergarten and related services, I have on my team Miss Samantha Smith, who is the Supervisor of Hearing and Vision Services, Shelley McAuliffe, who is the Supervisor of Speech and Language Services, and Miss Faith Bishel, who is the Supervisor of Child Find and Early Childhood Disabilities. This evening, we wanted to share the mission, vision, and strategic alignment for our division. For our mission, we're very focused on breaking barriers and building futures. We want to deliver high-impact, inclusive supports that empower students with disabilities to engage fully, think critically, and develop the resilience to thrive in learning and in life. Our vision is success for all. Students with disabilities are supported to achieve meaningful academic, social, and emotional growth. Whether they're graduating or entering the workforce, they're ready to thrive with the skills, confidence, and resilience to succeed in their communities and beyond. And for our mission and vision, we also have values in action. Our actions are guided by learning, respect, relationships, excellence, and equity. We strive to create environments where students with disabilities are included and supported for success. Next slide, please. We have strategic priorities, and these were taken from our indicator report card from MSDE, a special education report card, and we have 3 strategic priorities. The first one focuses on student performance. We want to close the performance gaps and improve outcomes for all students. That means that we are focused on meeting the state targets for the indicators from the report card for the areas of need and improvement by June 2026. We also are focused on rigorous, specially designed instruction in the least restrictive environment. Our second focus is on disproportionality and creating and implementing processes and structures so the outcomes are not predictable by race. We want to reduce disproportionality and suspensions of our Black and African American students who receive special education services. We want to reduce that to 2% or lower across identified schools. And that's through targeted supports, coaching, and professional learning for staff. Our third strategic priority is to expand and support inclusive opportunities for students to receive educational services in a less restrictive environment. So we are trying to increase the number of students with disabilities who are served in inclusive settings, and that is a focus for us over the next 3 years. And we want to strengthen our communication and collaboration by ensuring that schools implement consistent outreach practices and accessible resources for our students. As you can see on the next slide, as a part of our work in the division, we also have equity commitments. And for the equity commitments, we have an equity statement that we go by in our division. The Division of Specialized Support Services is a comprehensive, multi-departmental sector of MCPS, responsible for special education instruction, student support services, and work related to well-being, learning, and achievement. Our division develops, manages, and continuously evaluates a wide range of programs and initiatives designed to meet the needs of diverse learners, including special education and early childhood identification services. Our work is grounded in the belief that equitable access to high-quality instruction and supports is essential for all students. We are committed to advancing racial equity and social justice by closing opportunity and achievement gaps, disrupting disproportionality, and ensuring that every student has the tools and supports needed to thrive. In order to do this, we have to address disproportionality by actively monitoring and dismantling the longstanding national trend of over-identifying students of color as having emotional or intellectual disabilities and the disproportionate suspension of these students. This work includes the root cause analysis, disaggregated data monitoring, and implementation of evidence-based interventions. We also want to build capacity through professional learning by providing ongoing professional learning opportunities and job-embedded coaching for school staff, using the multi-tiered systems of support, using our child find process, and nonviolent crisis intervention, and also PBIS, our positive behavioral interventions and supports. And we also want to do that by using restorative justice practices. We also want to focus on strengthening academic outcomes for students receiving special education services. And we do that by cross-divisional collaboration and central services, making sure that we're using innovative practices with fidelity. And the last section is expands equitable access to critical resources and opportunities. And this would include things such as psychological assessments, post-secondary readiness support, and also targeted interventions for our chronically absent students. Next slide, thank you. We want to make sure that the work in our division is aligned to the strategic plan. You'll see here that there is the Future Ready strategic plan for MCPS that we make sure our work aligns to. There's also the Maryland Blueprint that we align our work to, as well as Maryland Transforms, which is a document that comes from MSDE. The focus of those are access and achievement, We're increasing participation and proficiency on MCAP and Alt-MCAP assessments. We're scheduling students for LRE first inclusion, and we're also a part of the school-based improvement plans. For family and community partnerships, we work to strengthen pre-K readiness. We act on parent survey feedback that we receive, and we are also focusing on two-way communication to make sure that we have inclusive partnerships with families. As I stated before, we also have a focus on equity and well-being with reducing disproportionality. And then also a part of the strategic plan is making sure that we have organizational excellence. We want to work on tracking due process and fiscal impacts of private placements and settlements in line with the plan's governance goal. Next slide, please. We do know that we have challenges in special education. They're primarily in 3 areas. One is on academic achievement and readiness. Our student proficiency rates fall below the state targets. We have wide achievement gaps with students with IEPs and all students. We're working to increase the pre-K and PEP readiness indicators. And also we're working on early childhood outcomes in social emotional knowledge and behavior development when those goals have not been met. We also have challenges in equity and inclusion. We're working on having increasing more access to least restrictive environments. We have an overrepresentation of students in restrictive placements, and we are working on that. And also, we want to get more parent survey results so that we can see where the engagement gaps are, especially among our families of our preschool and school-age children. We also wanted to share out that there are some challenges with compliance and stewardship. There's a sharp increase in state complaints. They've gone from 20 to 125 in just 2 years. And the due process requests have moved from 200 to 2,172 in FY25. We are seeing recurring violations in IEP development, service delivery, and evaluation timelines. And we also have rising costs of private placements. Our division has shared that the cost for private placements in FY25 was $57.5 million and approximately $2.4 million in settlements. We want to make sure that we are not overusing alternate assessments or excessive restraint use. And so we need a stronger accountability system to make sure that these challenges are addressed. Next slide. Even with these challenges, as a division, our goal is clear. We want to improve the outcomes for students with disabilities by closing the achievement gaps, reducing disproportionality and discipline, and we really want to make sure that we expand inclusive opportunities in the least restrictive environment for our students. Transition. To accomplish this, our work is anchored in 3 key priority areas. And also student performance. We want to make sure that over the next 10 years that we increase the proficiency rates of our students with disabilities by 10%. And we're hoping to do that with targeted interventions, coaching for special education teachers, and really monitoring the IEP goal process on a regular basis. With inclusive opportunities, we want to make sure that the number of students with disabilities being educated in general education classrooms increases by 10% by 2027. And we want to work on annual training and inclusive practices. We want to provide more professional learning on assistive technology. And the biggest thing is we really want to make sure that we increase our two-way engagement with families. And our goal is to host at least 2 engagement opportunities each year. So in closing, together, these three priority areas, student performance, disproportionality, and inclusive opportunities, represent the foundation of our improvement plan for the school year, and they align directly with the MCPS strategic plan. We want to make sure that we not only meet compliance expectations, but we also want to deliver on our commitment to make sure that we have equity and excellence for every student, including our students with autism, which is the focus for our coming together this evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams.
They're just, I think there's just a couple more slides. There's strategic plans for improving. We have a series of professional learning opportunities, and we open that up to school staff. We provide, multiple sessions so that everyone has an opportunity to sign up. You can look here and see that these are some of the topics that we'll provide professional learning on this school year. Next slide, please. But again, for this evening, our focus is on our students, our families, for our students with autism. So tonight we want to share an overview. We want to inform all of you about the continuum of services at the preschool level, whether it's with the preschool education program, which is PEP, or whether it's the comprehensive autism preschool program, which is our CAP program in our district. Thank you for listening to the overview of just who is on board and who is a part of the leadership for our division and some of the goals that we're focusing on this school year. And at this time, I will pass it over to someone who's on my team, who I talk to probably on a daily basis, the wonderful Miss Mary Rose Katina. She is our coordinator for the preschool education program, and she will talk to you now about our PEP services. I'll pass it over to you at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. Now, you're right, we're going to get down to the details about the specifics of PEP and CAP. And Mary Rose Katina is going to start us off with telling us about the 7 types of classes in the PEPS program. Thank you.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. I am Mary Rose Katina, the coordinator of the preschool education program, which we fondly call PEP. And I'm excited to be here with you this evening to tell you about our PEP services. So as an overview, PEP does provide a continuum of services, as has been said this evening. And that is so we can meet the needs of students with a very wide range of developmental delays and disabilities. So we do have services throughout the county. We are located in regular elementary schools and at 2 early childhood centers across the county. We have a total of about 302 classes across the county, and we serve over 2,100 students each year. As I've said, there's a continuum of services within PEP, from regular early childhood settings to self-contained special education classrooms. And I am going to talk about all of those. All of our PEP services follow both the general education literacy and math curriculums that are aligned to Maryland's early learning standards and to the Maryland College and Career pre-K standards. Our students are held to the same standards as those in general education. Our teachers work to customize and to adapt the instruction to meet the needs of our students while still working on the same indicators and standards as general education. And kindergarten readiness is our overarching goal, which you also heard from what Erica said a little bit earlier. So next slide. So I'm going to start with our PEP itinerant services. And these services are provided in either community preschools or childcare settings or within our MCPS pre-K and Head Start classrooms. Each year, we serve about 175 students through our PEP itinerant services. Special education teachers and our related service providers in the county provide direct services to students who are receiving PEP itinerant services. So they go out into the community or into the MCPS pre-K Head Start classrooms and provide the direct services within those regular early childhood settings. The services are aligned to the student's IEP goals. They're typically provided once or twice a week. And they're often recommended for those students who really have a minimal amount of specially designed instruction on their IEP. So their needs are not as great as a student who may need a PEP classroom. Next slide. So as Erica spoke about, we are always looking to expand and serve as many students as possible in inclusive settings. And this is definitely true for pre-K. As I said, PEP itinerant was one way that we serve children in regular early childhood settings, but we also have wonderful services that we call our PEP inclusive pre-K. And this is really a very strong partnership between PEP and our early childhood office to serve children in our general education pre-K or Head Start classrooms. It's a fully inclusive setting. Our students attend school in the general education classroom with their typically developing peers, and they receive their special education services in that classroom. These services are for students that are in their last year of preschool, which we'll call their pre-K year, right before they're getting ready to go to kindergarten in that following fall. We have 32 locations across the county where we have inclusive services and 45 classrooms right now. And we are always looking to work with general education to expand these opportunities. We are in 30 elementary schools and in 2 early childhood centers where we have these classes. It is, as I said, a fully inclusive general education setting. And the way this works is that it is a full co-teaching model. So the general education teacher and the special education teacher, they co-plan, they co-instruct, and they co-assess the students. So you might walk into a classroom and you would see that on one side of the room, there's a teacher with a group of students leading a group activity. And on the other side of the room, there's another teacher leading a group activity. And they're teaching the same thing, but we would call that parallel teaching. That would be one way they might co-teach. So they're both teaching the same thing, but they're teaching in smaller heterogeneous groups rather than in one large group. That's just one model. There's several others. They might be doing small groups with all the children rotating through, or they might be leading a large group activity where they're co-teaching that activity. Typically, these services are recommended when the IEP team has determined that the student's needs can be met in that regular early childhood setting, and that the student is within the area where we have these services at this time. Next slide. So another model that we have that is a fully inclusive model is our PEP collaboration model. And we have about 16 locations and 20 classes that are implementing this model of inclusive services. It is, again, for students that are in their pre-K year, so their last year of preschool before kindergarten. And this is another collaboration between PEP and our general education partners. And how this works is there's really 2 classrooms, and there's a special education teacher and paraeducator in one room, and a general education teacher and a general education paraeducator in the other room. But the students are mixed into heterogeneous groups, and they are taught by both sets of teachers and paraeducators. And one week, the one group of students, we'll call them Group A. They usually come up with more creative names, like the elephant group and the another farm animal, the cow group or something like that. They'll come up with something that's a little bit more creative. And that one group will spend 1 week in one room, and then the next week the groups will switch. So they are constantly in a heterogeneous group of students with the same group of students, but they are switching between both the special education classroom and the general education classroom. The teachers must co-plan together because they need to be teaching the same thing, so their instruction is mirrored in both classrooms. And again, the students recommended for these classes are typically recommended when the IEP team believes that their needs can be met in a regular early childhood setting. Next slide. So another type of inclusive services we have is called PEP Pilot. And because we are always looking for more opportunities to serve students in regular early childhood settings, we do have PEP Pilot services that were created several years ago, typically for those children who are younger, who are not in that pre-kindergarten year. And they are part-day services. And the way this works is that we invite community peers to come into our classrooms. They pay a small fee per semester, and they are part of our PEP Pilot classes with our students with IEPs. But they are typically developing children whose parents see this as a wonderful preschool opportunity for them. And then they are the typical peers for our students with IEPs. And again, the children that have IEPs who are recommended for these classrooms are those students who typically the team believes they can be served in a regular early childhood setting, and will really benefit from that opportunity to be served with alongside their typically developing peers. Next slide. So as was said, we do have a continuum of services because we serve a wide range of needs and students with a wide range of needs. Because as I said at the beginning, we serve about 2,100 students. So our students have many varying needs. So we do have self-contained settings as well as inclusive settings. The first type of class we have is called PEP Classic. We have these throughout the entire county. We're in 43 different elementary schools. It is a self-contained setting that is part day. These services are taught by a special education teacher, and there's also a special education paraeducator in the classroom. These services are typically recommended when the IEP team believes that the student does need to be removed from the general education setting to have their needs met. And they have multiple needs across various learning domains. The students, they have multiple needs across the learning domains, and they believe that their needs cannot be met in the general education setting. So it's 2 adults teaching in this classroom. Next slide. The next type of class that we do have is called the PEP Intensive Needs class, which we call PEP Inc. This class is taught by a special education teacher, and there are 2 special education paraeducators in this self-contained special ed setting. So as you can see, it is called the intensive needs class. The needs of the students are typically greater than the needs of our students in our classic classes because they really need a smaller teacher to student ratio. The classes are more teacher directed because we see that the children are gaining independence, but they're not as independent as the students we see in the other classes. So they need more direction from the teachers and the paraeducators to learn new skills and to be able to progress and meet their IEP goals. Their needs are multiple needs, typically across the various learning domains. It is a smaller class size than our classic classes typically. Um, and as I said, a little bit more teacher directed, that we don't expect the children to be as independent. We're working towards that independence, as in some of our other classes. And next slide. Okay, so the last type of PEP service that I'm going to speak about is called our PEP full day services. As the name says, this is a full day class that it meets 5 days a week, like all our other classes. It is taught by a special education teacher. There are 2 paraeducators, special education paraeducators, also working in the room. And it is also a self-contained special education classroom. And because it is full day, and there is such adult support, these classes provide significant opportunities for repetition and practice throughout the entire school day. So the students that are typically recommended for these classes, they typically have more substantial global learning delays across multiple domains. And of course, just like with our other services, even with their accommodations, with their supplementary aids, the IEP team feels that their needs cannot be met in that regular early childhood setting. What you see when we talk about repetition, more opportunities for repetition and practice, these classes still use our general education curriculum. They still are working with the same set of early childhood standards. However, the instruction is often customized more, and at a slower pace. There is more repetition to meet the needs of these students while they're still working towards those same standards and indicators that we expect for all preschoolers. Okay, and I think that's all of my slides. So I will turn this over to Lisa Grant and Lauren McGinley.
Thank you, Mary Rose. So I'm going to start to talk about our Comprehensive Autism Preschool Program, or what we refer to as CAP. CAP serves preschool-age children ages 3 to 5 with either an educational disability code of autism spectrum disorder or developmental delay. CAP provides intensive, individualized, and evidence-based instruction designed to meet each child's unique learning and behavioral needs. Our goal is to prepare students for success in school-aged educational settings. Our instructional approach uses evidence-based practices rooted in applied behavior analysis, structured teaching, and naturalistic learning strategies. We provide a full-day program that integrates instruction across all developmental areas that include communication, cognition, or your literacy and math skills, social emotional skills, motor skills, and adaptive skills. We offer a highly individualized learning environment with data-driven instruction tailored to each child's strengths and needs. CAP classrooms are led by certified special education teachers with specialized training in autism intervention. There are 2 full-time paraeducators for each class, and additional 3 part-time paraeducators per class. This does vary across the county depending on the location of the school. Teams include related service providers such as speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, and program specialists from the autism unit. Staff implement consistent routines and behavioral supports to promote positive learning experiences. Students in CAP make measurable progress in language, adaptive behavior, and pre-academic readiness. The program's individualized focus ensures students transition to school-age placements best match their learning profiles and developmental needs. And we do emphasize collaboration with families We recognize parents and caregivers as essential partners in each child's progress. Currently, we have 21 classes in 8 locations throughout the county. Those locations include Roscoe Nix, Rosemary Hills, Maryvale, Fields Road, Rosemont, Woodfield, Cabin Branch, and Snowden Farm. Our classes are located in neighborhood schools that serve all types of learners. However, students attending our programs or our services receive their instruction in classrooms without typical age peers, as their needs do require specially designed instruction throughout the entire day. Next slide.
Students in CAP may have significant needs in the following areas. So adaptive skills, behaviors, communication, and social skills. We do have several program goals in CAP. The first goal is that we want to promote student independence. We want to build the skills children need to participate meaningfully and independently in daily routines and in their learning environment. Our second goal is we want to develop communication and language. So we want to strengthen expressive and receptive language to support students' functional communication. Many of our CAP students are identified as nonverbal or having limited communicative intent. While our goal is for students to use verbal speech, it is most important to us that they are taught how to functionally communicate. This can be done using pictures or gestures to communicate appropriately, and staff target specific communication skills daily through modeling and reinforcement. Another goal is that we want to enhance student learning skills. So like many of the other programs, we want to foster early academic readiness through structured and engaging activities. Our primary focus is on teaching foundational skills, and those are things such as matching, imitation, listening and responding to directions, answering questions, initiating and responding to greetings, and production of imitation of sounds and words. Another goal of CAP is we want to support adaptive and social skills. We want to increase self-help, including toileting and other self-care skills. We want to increase social interaction, things like turn taking, waiting, gaining attention, and play skills to promote well-rounded development. We want to provide direct instruction on teaching replacement skills for problem behaviors. Often students in CAP engage in problem behaviors that could include, but not limited to, tantrums, non-cooperative behavior, self-injury, and highly physical behaviors or aggressive behaviors, such as scratching or biting. And so we work to teach our students those replacement skills to decrease those problem behaviors. We also want to prepare our students for transition into kindergarten. So we really want to equip our students with the foundational skills necessary to access a variety of school-age programs and supports. So in CAP, instruction is provided individually and or in dyads for approximately 4 hours per day. Dyads are 2 students to 1 adult. During this time, we are focusing on teaching students to request. We're teaching those foundational skills and teaching those appropriate play skills. The school day is approximately 6 hours per day. It's a full day program. And throughout that time, students are learning to communicate appropriately, engage in appropriate learning behavior, and interact with adults and peers. It is a full day program and there is no nap time. Instruction is individualized based on IEP goals and objectives. We do group instruction that is provided daily as appropriate, and that may include things like a morning meeting, as well as a literacy or math time based on those pre-K standards. Students are included in lunch and recess with appropriate staff support. And then students do participate in art, music, PE, and media. And that is taught by the content teacher with the appropriate support from CAP staff. And you can see, again, teaching methods are based on applied behavior analysis.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary Rose, Lauren, and Lisa. That you gave a lot of great information, a lot of details. Very helpful. So we have a few questions. Let's move on to them. And anybody out there who didn't write a question, you can write it now into the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can call on you if you prefer to unmute and say it out loud. Okay, so one question we have is, the children placed in CAP have a range of disabilities. Are they all diagnosed with autism? So that's a question about CAP.
So I can answer that. No, you do not need to have a specific disability code in order to access services in Montgomery County. You need to be found eligible for special education services, but disability code does not drive placement. It's more about your need, your strengths and your needs, and whether or not the student needs the type of instructional model that we provide in CAP and the level of intensity of services.
Okay, that's helpful. Another parent asks, is there an existing pre-K/PEP readiness checklist that parents can have access to?
So I can answer that. So there isn't a specific checklist. What we use are the indicators that are the expectations for students who are 4 years old and what is expected of them when they leave us and move on to kindergarten. So we use our indicators, our state standards, our early childhood standards to tell us where a child should be by the time they are leaving us at the end of the pre-K year.
Okay.
And then just to add to, in order to access special education services in pre-K, there's no prerequisites or readiness skills the child needs. We will meet the child where they are and provide instruction on what they need.
Okay, sounds good. Here's another question about CAP. Can a child start CAP at the age of 5 at the start of the academic year in September and be 6 when they graduate?
So if they are 5 before September 1 of that school year, they are considered a kindergarten age student, and CAP is preschool. So our comparable services to CAP for elementary age students is our classic elementary autism services. And you can hear more about that on Thursday night if interested in hearing what about our K-5 services.
Okay. And you're referring to Thursday night, we'll have another session like this, but it's specifically about elementary school level programs.
Correct.
All right. Another question. What is an example of the type of multiple needs a child would have to be placed in a multiple needs class?
So when we say that children have, multiple needs across multiple domains, what we're really looking at is that usually the children that we see in our self-contained settings typically have needs across those various developmental domains, which would be those areas of early social emotional learning and social emotional skills, literacy skills, math skills, possibly some fine motor needs. So it's not typically one domain that a student has needs in. That doesn't mean that a student has to have needs across all those domains to be placed in one of our classes, or that sometimes we don't have students who are, the IEP team believes that their needs are should be met in one of our PEP self-contained classes, but their needs are more in one area as opposed to across several areas. So it's typically across multiple domains, sometimes not.
Okay. Another question. If a child is starting in CAP, how is it determined when or if they are ready to switch into a less restrictive PEP setting?
We look at our data It's a great question. So we're looking at the data that we're collecting. We want to see if the child can learn through more traditional special education instruction. We might try some inclusive practices. We would work with the family. We would work with PEP. We would have an IEP meeting to determine whether or not the change of placement or services would be appropriate. But it's all about looking at the classroom data that we're collecting.
Does it happen often? Is that a common thing?
It definitely happens for a handful of students every year, absolutely. So I will say it's probably harder for our families to go from a full day to a half a day. So that's a little challenging. I think more for the family than it is for, the child or the school system, but it does definitely happen.
Is the CAP program all year, meaning during the summer session as well?
So we are a 10-month school, services just like all the other services. But I will say that we do most of our students, not all, but most of the students in CAP are found to meet that criteria for extended school year, or what we refer to as some of us as summer services. And so they would attend for 3, 4, 5 weeks, depending on what the IEP team determines to be appropriate for them.
I assume it's the same for students that are in PEP, that it's 10 months, but
Correct.
they might
Yeah.
need extended year. Okay. If an MCPS student has an autism diagnosis, does MCPS make a placement in CAP, PEP, or another setting, or is there a possibility MCPS will not place them in early learning?
So I would say that we'd have to look at the educational impact that the student's disability, what is the educational impact from the student's disability. So they are a student with autism. How is it impacting their learning? And so we would look again at their strengths and their needs, and if they have needs, we would write goals, and then the goals would determine the amount of services. So a student with autism in pre-K could be placed in CAP or PEP, or could be found not to be eligible for special education services if they don't have any significant needs.
This is a question that was submitted before you started your session. Do you have any additional information on Gestalt language processing, such as resources and/or specialists who can work with the school system to provide support?
I would suggest that the family or whoever's asking that question reach out to Shelley McCullough, the supervisor of speech and language services. I think she would be the best person to speak about that Gestalt communication system.
Okay, sounds good. And the other question that was submitted beforehand is, what accommodations should we be looking for to support our PDA autistic child in kindergarten? So maybe preparation for kindergarten, they're asking about. Or
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an answer for that. That might be a question we'll have to get back to you on.
okay.
I
Mary
think
Rose?
because it's such an individual, each child is so unique, and IEPs are an individualized plan. So any accommodations or supplementary aids, anything that is really based on the individual needs of that particular, strengths and needs of that student. So I think that's part of the reason it's such a hard question to answer.
Okay. How many students are in a typical CAP class?
So this year, there are typically 6 or 7 students in each classroom.
Okay, very small.
Very small, yes.
If a child is assigned to a specific school for CAP, does this mean when they are 5, would they still remain at that school for special education, specifically for the autism program for kindergartner?
So we do have more schools that have the elementary autism program, classic autism, than we do CAP. Some of our CAP sites do have kindergarten autism services, and some are just solely pre-K services. It really depends on your home address. And we have articulation patterns where a certain home school goes to a school for pre-K CAP services, and then sometimes it's the same school for kindergarten if the service is available and there's no closer school, and sometimes it's a different school. It really would just depend on your home address. And if your child was in CAP, you could certainly ask that question about where the kindergarten location would be.
What will the status be of PEP/pre-K programs with the current cuts to special education? How can parents and school staff come together to support each other for the student effectively?
That was a question for
Yeah.
PEP, I believe, Mary Rose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I can answer that question as far as, what's going on in the greater realm of with the federal government and things. We are moving forward with just plans for going forward and for serving the students that we need to serve. I think the second part of the question about parents and school staff coming together is something that we always want to promote. We do work very closely with our families in PEP. Each PEP location has a person called a parent educator who is a full-time teacher level position. Some of our locations that are smaller have a part-time person. But that person is there to work together with families to make sure that we're addressing the needs of the family, we're meeting the needs of the students, that we're working with parents through the IEP process, helping parents to know what's expected in kindergarten. So I think that piece of families and school staff working together, especially with our younger students, is critically important. And we place a very, we place a lot of put a lot of effort into that relationship.
Yeah, that's so important. And that reminds me, actually, there was another question which we discussed even before we started the session. Do you know of any respite programs? And you did have a resource for the parent who was asking about respite programs. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so in Montgomery County, we have a parent resource center that we have a person who it is for all of our families with students in special education services from pre-K to 12. And her name is Mary Beth Mazaranis. And I know that Sue did pull her information. And she has a wealth of resources and information that she can share with families about community resources, respite, understanding the IEP process, all sorts of things. So in addition to your school staff, there is this other resource in MCPS that is so helpful to families.
Yeah, she's really great. I just put the contact information in the chat. All right, next question. Can a student start CAP at any time during the school year, or must they start in September?
No, if they can start any preschool service, they start typically on their third birthday, or if they are currently receiving Part C services, so they elected to remain with infants and toddlers as a 3-year-old, they can change their mind at any time and come back and ask for an IEP to be written and start services at that time.
Great. Okay. Is there room for neuroaffirming practices alongside ABA practices in MCPS? How are both implemented? And are teachers provided training opportunities in neuroaffirming practices?
I can try to take this one. So I would say that the field of ABA in general is changing. So it's very different from 5, 10, 20 years ago, and further. And we have carried out, at least within our CAP and our classic autism services, a training for all of our teachers and paraeducators called values-based teaching. And that really talks a lot about how the field has changed and those neuroaffirming practices. I do think that overall within CAP and our other programs, we do try to, or we are, really trying to foster those student strengths. And we're not trying to get rid of autistic traits. We do see them as a positive. We are simply really working to try to teach our students how to function in a neurotypical world as best as they can. So we're trying to build that independence, build that functional communication, build those foundational skills. I feel like we could talk about this all night, but I hope that gives a good summary that there is room for it. We do acknowledge that the field of ABA is changing, and we are continuing to do the work to research continuing to do the work to educate the staff within our programs.
Okay, thank you. Is there a list of how parents can ascertain potential or likely placements based on our homeschool? And I'm not sure if they're asking about placements after preschool or placement in preschool.
I think it's a question, it's a follow-up to what I said, based on their address, where would their student go for certain programs? I think Ms. Keisler, like is there still a list of locations on your website for,
Yeah.
So it doesn't say what address would go, but you can at least see a map of where schools are located and what's close to your home address. I think that if you had specific questions, if your child's in a program, you could reach out to either the parent educator in PEP or the program specialist. If not, you could call the autism office. We can help walk you through that as well.
Great. Okay. So what kind of specific data is being collected on the child and how is it used to support them? How is it all communicated to the parents?
So data on IEP goals and objectives are collected depending on the services or the student. We might be collecting additional data. So for instance, in CAP, we are collecting data on their communication style. We're collecting data on their level of independence with using the bathroom or arrival and departure routines. In addition to collecting data on the IEP goals and objectives and some of those prerequisite skills or pieces of the curriculum that are not just on the IEP, but other skills that we feel are important to teach. That information is shared in CAP. It's shared quarterly with our families. And I believe in PEP and all pre-K other services, it is twice a year. So in January and in June.
That is correct. We are collecting data all the time on IEP goals, as well as on our curriculum. We have curriculum assessments that our teachers are using with students, and that data is used to inform their instruction based on what a child's skills are and where their needs are. We use that data then to inform how we need to teach that child and what we need to teach them, as well as any of our assessments that from the state that we have to look at, and all of that data is provided to parents at our twice yearly updates on the IEP, but also at the parent conferences in November, or just communicate it at other times to parents, just to let parents know how their children are progressing.
Okay, great. Okay, here's another one. I was hoping you could speak a little more about the key differences, aside from age, between CAP and the classic autism program, and that would be the program that begins at kindergarten.
The staffing ratio is different. So as students get older, we do, really we're working on that independence in CAP. And so while we have more adults within our CAP classrooms, our elementary classrooms typically are staffed with 1 special education teacher and 2 full-time paraeducators, so 3 adults. Whereas in CAP, we also have those part-time paraeducators. And that's because we want our students to really be successful with less adult support as they get older and enter elementary school. Another key difference is, and you'll hear about some of this on Thursday if you attend the elementary session, but we are tasked with teaching the grade level curriculum in the elementary autism program. And our students are working towards something called alternate learning outcomes. And if you would like more information about that, I would certainly advise you come to that presentation on Thursday, because they will talk more about that. The style of instruction is very similar, and we typically are teaching for the majority of the day with those principles of applied behavior analysis.
Great. Thank you. That was very thorough.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question. Is there before and after care available for special ed classes?
It's a great question. Some schools do have before and after care, but for many of those aftercare services, it is for kindergarten age students and up. I know that sometimes families have been able to work with those daycare providers or after school providers for possibly a 4-year-old. But many of our families of 3-year-old children struggle with finding daycare. That is a need. Barriers, I don't know if you know of any other, if you have additional information about that.
No? Okay. A follow-up question actually about scheduling is, for the half-day programs, do they meet in the morning or the afternoon, and what time?
So they meet both morning and afternoon. Not every school has every type of class at every time. And they are 2.5 hours. And it depends on the bell time of the school, what exactly time they meet, because they either start or end the day on the bell time of the school. So different schools, some of our schools begin at 9 o'clock in the morning, some begin at 9:25. Some of our schools end at 3:25, some end at 3:50. So it depends on the bell time of the school with the exact hours, but they are all 2.5 hours. And we have morning and afternoon sessions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, can you talk a bit more about kids who use AAC devices for CAP? What specific software do they use? I ask because my son is about to start his AAC device, and I was wondering if he would need to be reintroduced to a new AAC device once he starts with the CAP program.
So all of our CAP and autism classrooms are provided with with at least 1 or 2 iPads with AAC software on it, and we use TouchChat as our software. However, if a family is working with a private provider and the child is using LAMP or another type of software, and the family chooses to send that device in, we will accommodate, work with, and adapt. And so we will, try and build that consistency. But if we're going to be using the school-based iPads with our students, TouchChat is the software that we use.
How can school PTAs supplement and support PEP programs other than including PEP in school-wide events?
So I would say that's That's a great question and I know our classes and our schools would really appreciate being included in things that the PTA is taking on and supporting PEP. I would say it would really be on an individual basis with the school administration and with the PEP staff at that particular school, what they would see as their needs, because our schools are in very different parts of the county and have various different needs. But I think the PTA wanting to be involved with PEP and involving PEP in other school events or in ways that they could be supported would be very greatly appreciated.
Right, we have just one other question. I think so. If you have more questions, please put them in the chat now, so they can get answered. So this one is, who is the best person to contact to be considered for the CAP program?
So placement into CAP is an IEP team decision. So if your child is currently receiving services through infants and toddlers, they will have an initial IEP meeting, and that team will make that decision. If they're currently in PEP and you have questions about CAP, I would talk to the classroom teacher that your child is working with.
So
And if you have general questions about CAP, you could call our office. We'll be happy to answer them.
okay. Do we have any more questions? Let's see. Okay, it looks like from Emily. Sorry. Okay. How are OT and speech services integrated? Are those supports generally provided within the classroom through a push-in model, or do students also receive individual pull-out sessions? And what does the average service frequency look like across the different PEP settings?
So the services are integrated, the OT and speech services, and they're different for every child based on the child's needs. So a speech pathologist and OT will plug into the classroom and deliver services in the classroom to the student if that is appropriate for what the child needs to meet their goals. If they determine that they need to do some pull out to help that child achieve their goals, then they will do some of that. So it's really very much individualized to the needs of the student. And so is the student, the service frequency. Again, that's really an IEP team decision based on the needs of the student. And it's not set by any certain type of PEP service or setting that determines how much therapy the student will need or will receive. It's really based on that child's individual needs.
Okay, another question for CAP. Could you talk a bit more about lunch? Could my son buy lunch at school, or is he expected to bring his lunch? Also, how do they monitor students during lunch? I ask specifically because my son tends to devour his food and he needs someone to be there with him so that he slows down.
Students can buy lunch at school. They have that option. They're eating in the cafeteria. And so you would set up their lunch account. You can work with the child's school to do that. There's a school menu, so you'd be able to pull that off the website or ask the school. They typically have at least 3 adults in the cafeteria with them. And so there is adult support and close adult proximity for students. Every student needs different support, but if your child tends to devour their lunch, there would be someone there to prompt them to slow down, so that they were eating at least safely. And we do try to teach our students those appropriate like pro-social skills in that setting. So there'd be adults there to work on that.
When you say there would be 3 adults, is that for all the people in the lunchroom, or is that for the CAP?
No, for the CAP classes.
3 adults per 6
For
or
6 to 7
student.
kids, yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Does the early childhood team stick to the September 1st guide for determining grade placements as well, or is there any wiggle room?
So students can start receiving services in either PEP or CAP at the age of 3. So whenever your 3rd birthday is, you can start receiving services at that time. I think is that the question they're asking?
Asking about for determining grade placements as well.
So for kindergarten, it is typically September 1. And when you say, is there wiggle room, are you asking, can you repeat another year of pre-K, or are you asking, like, can you start if your birthday is August 27th? I think if it's the latter question, I believe there is a test that you are required to take in order to go into kindergarten services early. But you would have to work with your neighborhood school, or just ask your school team, and they can certainly address your specific questions.
I was going to say for pre-K grades, like if you're talking, there aren't grades in pre-K, students can start on their 3rd birthday, as Lisa said. The only thing we do sometimes say is a student's pre-K year, which when we refer to their pre-K year, we're talking about the year prior to them transitioning to kindergarten, so that they would be 4 by September 1st in their pre-K year. And then 5 by September 1st in their kindergarten year.
When do conversations with the IEP team normally happen to discuss ESY?
Typically, it's at your annual review. That's prior to the summer.
Could a 4-year-old do the preschool year instead of pre-K and do pre-K at 5 years old?
Typically, no. There is a kindergarten waiver process, which is a whole different process. I know that information is available on the MCPS website. And that is something that you as a parent would have to apply for. I do believe, though, the kindergarten waiver, if you get it approved, you are waiving your MCPS services for that year, but you are delaying kindergarten. So your child would then start kindergarten the following year.
But they wouldn't get services during that year.
That's right, Lisa.
That is
right.
correct.
Yeah.
The only thing that they can possibly get is they are eligible possibly for a services plan where they can get speech language services only if they have speech on their IEP. But that is, a service plan is different than regular IEP services.
All right. Well, thank you, Mary Rose, Lauren, and Lisa. That was really, really great information. And we appreciate that you took the time to put together the presentation so our parent community can be informed. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us tonight. And once again, thank you to MCPS staff for sharing this important information with all of us. Good night.